Which side of my mouth works again? David Mamet says that the truth hurts, except in art where the truth cleanses. Why is that?
Why is it so hard to confront grief and anger and depression in real life, but so very cathartic to do so in fiction? If I found out that humanity was on its way out, and that not only would our extinction be protracted and painful, but that the world would be better off without us, I'd be pretty upset. But watching Cabin in the Woods always makes me feel better about humanity, even though that's exactly what it depicts.
I'm sorry I let you get attacked by a werewolf and then into the world.
Why?
Well, something else that Mamet says, which I happen to agree with, is that dramatic structure, which is to say storytelling, is an expression of a naturally occurring need in humans to structure the world as thesis, antithesis, synthesis, which is just a fancy way of saying
we humans like to ascribe causality to things. We do it habitually, even when there's not any causality to ascribe, lesson to be learned, or disaster to prevent. Events might unfold randomly, there won't be anyone trying to teach us any lesson, and the damage might have already been done. But figuring out the why, or even just the how, still brings us some measure of peace.
You can die with them, or you can die for them.
Gosh, they're both so enticing.
It's not an attempt to control the world, but rather a confession of helplessness before it.
This we offer in humility and fear, for the blessed peace of your eternal slumber, as it ever was.
As it ever was.
And if the examination is honest, it can't help but make us feel better.
I'm not saying movies make us whole or cure depression or anything. I'm just saying I'd rather live in a world with dramatic catharsis than one without.
You know that scene in Cool Runnings when Dries trips and falls halfway through his qualifying run for the 1988 Summer Olympics? Having trained his whole life for that one particular task, only to suffer a complete and catastrophic failure right out of the gate. That's kinda like what graduating college was like for me.
I had trained my whole life to use my brain to get ahead. You're not gonna believe this, but I was always something of a precocious student.
But when I graduated from the University of Chicago right in the middle of the greatest economic recession since the Great Depression, brain power wasn't exactly a hot commodity. Nepotism was.
I got you a job with Webster and Cohen.
Even though I didn't have very many connections west of the Mississippi, I still decided to move to LA just a couple months after graduation to try and kickstart my movie career.
This plan did not go well. During that time, I was technically employed as a temp, but they only found me 5 days of work in 5 months, and my own attempts at snagging full-time work went absolutely nowhere. Hollywood might as well have been on the moon.
I'll pay you $1 to shut up!
Sometimes I'd watch Gattaca to make myself feel better. I think Gattaca dramatized my early attempts at breaking into Hollywood really well. I wanted to join the movie business so bad I was willing to live where I didn't know anybody, doing thankless, menial work for basically no pay, just for the chance to be in the same geographic vicinity of what I wanted to do with my life.
I was also something of a smartass.
When you clean the glass, Vincent, don't clean it too well.
What do you mean?
You might get ideas.
Yeah, but if the glass is clean, it'll be easier for you to see me when I'm on the other side of it.
Nightcrawler is another film that really nails the LA fame culture zeitgeist. Even if nobody's actively stabbing you in the back, you still get the sense that there are far more people who'd happily step over your corpse to further their careers than those who wouldn't.
The name of my company is Video Production News, a professional news gathering service. That's how it should be read and that's how it should be said.
Don't get me wrong, 95% of the people I met in LA were lovely. It's less the day-to-day interactions that bothered me so much as the atmosphere itself.
Everything from the vacuous advertising, to the systemic income disparities, to the tinderbox landscape devoid of any environmental awareness, despite the city's hypocritically health-conscious reputation. I'm not blaming the residents here for the troubles, mind you. I'm blaming the land developers, who'd sooner build condos inside historic wildfire corridors than anywhere else, simply because they come with a view, and then lobby to prevent the LA Fire Department from conducting regular, controlled burns of the landscape, because the blackened lots they leave behind would diminish property values. But hey, In-N-Out Burger's pretty great.
After 5 months of living off savings, with no work and no prospects, I couldn't afford to keep gas in the tank anymore, and so I finally found myself, unemployed and broke, back in my hometown, just 6 months after graduation.
My hometown. Did I mention my hometown is in South Florida? And this would have been the summer of 2012? Right when Magic Mike came out? Magic Mike also dramatized some of what I was going through at the time. I was prospectless and broke, but surrounded by wealth and the thin veneer of success.
What are you doing? Stop. What the fuck are you doing, man? You fucking...
I started a serious cardio regimen, mostly because I had nothing else to do. And I acquired a sort of pointless level of fitness that I was really too depressed to enjoy. I did what I could to stoke the fires of my passions, but my day-to-day life... Is this really the only clip we have to play? I know it's not. I'm editing this video. Roll the one with the roll the furniture one.
Yeah, it's a cool table. Where'd you get it?
There we go.
It's just some old shit that blew up on the beach after the last hurricane.
Wait, you made that? You should sell these things.
Thank you. That's actually the idea.
I did what I could to stoke the fires of my passions, but my day-to-day life was mostly made up of just trying to find work, which basically went about as well as it did for Antonio and Bicycle Thieves. 11 months went by, and I still hadn't snagged so much as an interview for full-time work. It got to the point where I was weighing the pros and cons of accepting a seasonal part-time job at Michael's, which would have only paid me just enough to cover the gas I'd spend getting there and back.
Don't get me wrong, I know I'm one of the lucky ones for having a place to stay rent-free indefinitely for all that time. But after a year of spinning my wheels like that, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going through some serious circumstantial depression. It left me wondering, I don't know, what the point of all the effort was. Everyone else's success just looked like luck. Or worse, grifting. How was I supposed to compete with that? Then, I got an email.
16 months after I'd graduated college, I finally got my first full-time job offer. Back in Chicago. This is where we talk about... No, I wish. This is where we talk about Glengarry Glen Ross.
Get them to sign on the line which is dotted. You hear me, you fucking faggots?
Which is probably the most literal representation of my time at that job that's ever been put to film.
Put that coffee down.
Regular viewers will know this job made me miserable. Just miserable. Without going too far into the weeds, the work was stressful, the hours were long, and the boss was an unrepentant dickhead who governed the office through fear, belligerence, and humiliation.
What's your name?
Fuck you! That's my name!
Safe in the knowledge that the job market was too shitty for newly minted college grads who were clearing expenses by about $100 a month to start getting picky with their choices of employer. He was also, coincidentally, a millionaire.
You see this watch? Yeah. That watch costs more than your car.
Now, I'm not saying this was the absolute worst job in the world, but I was very ill-suited to it, and it was very ill-suited to me, and it tore me up inside trying to do it well. How did I cope?
I'm not sure I did. I mean, Sunday nights usually threw me into an antisocial despair as I came to preemptively dread the week ahead, and the rest of my time I wasn't doing much better. I developed real anxieties about doing anything that wasn't directly connected to trying to leave.
Oh, fuck you! Fuck the lot of you! Fuck you all!
And frankly, a year and a half later, I'm still trying to teach myself how to just relax and not work on anything.
You were saying?
This, for those of you wondering, was my rock bottom. I actually think you'll find most people hit rock bottom somewhere in their mid-20s. Now, I'm not saying movies were there to save me, but they definitely made it better than it could have been.
One Saturday, in July of 2013, because, yes, we had mandatory Saturday shifts at this job, the boss singled me out for something that wasn't my fault. He had everyone put their calls on hold and ranted about my incompetence for about 10 minutes. For my part, I bravely sat there and took the abuse.
When I got out of work that day, I just had to see a movie. And wouldn't you know if the movie I saw that day wasn't Pacific Rim?
Which is just exactly the kind of movie that I needed to see that day. When you're not looking for a brilliant solution to your problems, but just one that works.
Elbow rocket! Now!
And if the solution is still tactical enough for you to feel like you really earned your victory, then all the better. Lots of films helped me through this time, actually.
Just one way or another, we're getting this thing done!
which weren't so much about finding specific solutions as they were about articulating rage.
Do you know what your sin is, Mal? Oh, hell. I'm a fan of 07. Right now, I'm gonna have to go with wrath.
I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
In early 2014, I started posting critical video essays on my YouTube channel, mostly in an effort to retain my sanity and to feel like I was working towards some sort of a creative career.
During this time, I entered one of my spec scripts into the Nickel Screenwriting Fellowship, where it actually placed in the top 15%. But unless you win the damn thing, nobody really cares. As time went on, and I slowly exhausted every last hope that I might break into Hollywood as a fully credentialed screenwriter, my gut started telling me that my first film was going to be self-produced. Which brings me to the next film we're going to be talking about. My film. Second Service.
Which, hey, if you haven't watched my film yet, check out the link in the description. Feel free to hotlink everywhere. Maybe send it to a manager? It probably doesn't take a professional detective to deduce that much of this film is semi-autobiographical. A deliberate response to some of the things I was going through at the time.
TLDR. I knew that being happy would take a lot of hard work. What I didn't know was that being miserable could be just as exhausting.
Not all the crime stuff, obviously, but the themes.
If you want to get rich, you don't steal $1 million from a rich person. You take $1 from 1 million poor people.
And the collection calls.
Hi, Mr. Adams? Hi, sorry, did I wake you? Well, you know I gotta make this call. Well, I can't close your file till you settle your bill.
Of course, I can't talk about my own film without mentioning at least a couple others. I developed a special relationship with two specific films while Second Service was in production. The Martian and Castaway.
I've touched on this in a previous video, but basically, both of these films captured much of what I was feeling before, during, and immediately following the release of my film. I started pre-production in a very dark place. If being stranded on a deserted island or a barren planet is a good metaphor for depression, then plotting Second Service was my building a raft, or retooling a rover in order to escape. If you wanted to extend the metaphor even further, this vlog would be my Wilson. And yes, I realize there are some disturbing implications there.
I'm sorry! I'm sorry, Wilson!
I actually wasn't crazy about The Martian when I first saw it, because I remember thinking that Mark Watney got over his depression way too quickly. That brief moment in the film, really just a shot, where he wasn't sure if he had the wherewithal to even try to survive.
I'm not gonna die here.
I wanted to see that struggle play out, because that's the struggle that I was going through at the time. But when I saw the movie after I'd finished my own film, I loved every minute of it, because I had finally come up with an escape plan of my own. It just goes to show you can't always appreciate a film until you've seen it a second time.
Alright, where are we in the timeline? By February of 2017, Second Service was finally in the can. Just 3 months later, I finally found a new job, and left the decrepit one in the dust.
The very first film I saw in theaters after I gave my notice was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Not since Pacific Rim had the stars aligned to deliver a viewing experience so perfectly suited to what I was going through. This film is all about recovering from trauma with the help of created family.
Thus far, I've talked up the therapeutic power of movies, vlogging, and quitting your crappy day job. But the real coping mechanism, the one truly indispensable piece of emotional survival gear that I don't ever want to be without, is friends.
I generally put more stock in created family than in blood relations, because your relationships with relatives inevitably come with so much baggage. They're always putting so much on you.
Please give me the chance to be the father she would want me to be.
And they often offer unconditional love as if it's some kind of virtue. But unconditional love is, meaningless, right? I just mean to say that it's unearned and arbitrary. There's something cheap about it. I prefer my love provisional, conditional, reciprocal, bespoke. Tell me that what I do matters. Otherwise, it's just a recipe for being taken for granted.
What?
Sure, you might get that kind of love from your blood relatives, but you'll only get that kind of love from your friends.
Rube, get out of the way! You're gonna get hurt! Hi!
With that said, the most important thing I learned about friendship in my 20s wasn't its value. I mean, we all know that friendship is valuable.
I also learned more about how it operates, which I suspect will be far more useful as time goes on. For example, I learned that arguing doesn't necessarily mean that a relationship is defective. In fact, it's usually only the most important relationships that are worth the aggravation of an argument.
What a pain in the ass you are. That's true. You're not young, and you're not new. And you do make people laugh. And me? I'm still with you because you make me laugh.
I was taught growing up, we were all taught growing up, that love in general, and romantic love in particular,
is sort of like a default experience of adulthood, but that it happens to everybody. But that's not true. Look, human consciousness is practically a psychosis. We all know that.
Why?
Why are you giving him drugs? What the hell are Pirin tablets?
It's aspirin with the A and the S scraped off.
My God, what a brilliant idea.
I know.
But love? Love is swing for the fences weird.
It was, like, so weird.
Not to say that that weirdness devalues it. Hell, I'd say it makes it even greater. We're all weird enough as it is. If you find someone who's happy to be weird with you in complimentary ways, then you've hit the crackpot jackpot, my friend.
Do you love her? A normal human being couldn't live under the same roof with her without going nutty. She's my idea of nothing. I asked you a simple question. Do you love her? Yes! But don't hold that against me. I'm a little screwy myself.
Something else to keep in mind is that while society tends to present love as something to aspire to, something with which to improve yourself, I've found that love does not come with any guarantee of self-improvement.
Make no mistake, love is loss. Love is dependency. Love is compromise. Love is giving up 76 different things just to get one back. Provisionally.
So you know what I gotta do? I gotta sell my plot in Key Biscayne so I can get one next to you in that shithole Las Copa, so I never miss a laugh.
And that's just the healthy relationships. We're not even talking about toxic, parasitic, inequitable relationships here. But then, you don't love someone because you heard the exchange rate is any good. You love someone because there's nothing else you can do with them. Because loving them is a foregone conclusion. Because you don't see it as an exchange at all.
I'm 50 years old. There's only one place in the world I call home, and it's because you're there. So take it. What difference does it make if I say you can stay or you say I can stay? It's ours.
Coming to this realization is important, but I also think it's just as important to take the time to come to this realization yourself, and not take anybody else's word for it. Not your parents, not your priest, not any movie, and certainly not me. You see this in Brooklyn. The movie, not the borough. Well, maybe you see it in the borough, but you definitely see it in the movie.
Ailish wonders throughout the entire third act whether or not she's going to stay with Tony, and when she finally makes up her mind, the decision is both a long time coming and instantaneous.
I'd forgotten.
You'd forgotten? What a thing.
I'd forgotten what this town is like. My name is Ailish Fiorello.
God, I love this movie.
Alright, that pretty much brings us up to the present, and we've got 2 films yet to talk about.
Up in the Air might very well be the single most watched film of my 20s. I only saw it for the first time on the random recommendation of a friend, but boy do I spark to absolutely everything in it. Feeling out of place and rootless in the American Midwest, hating your job but feeling guilty for hating it because so many people would be happy with so much less.
You okay?
We going?
Growing distant from your family and being called something of an antisocial hermit for it.
You and the kids?
Missy's outstanding. Matthew made varsity. How's the road?
Couldn't be better.
Learning to finally enjoy at least some aspects of flying, and not least of all, realizing that nothing will screw you up faster than thinking you're supposed to have your shit figured out in your 20s.
When I was 16, I thought by 23, I'd be married, maybe have a kid, corner office by day, entertaining at night.
Well, at a certain point, you stop with the deadlines.
It can be a little counterproductive.
In my experience, your 20s aren't for finding your feet. They're for figuring out how to survive not being able to.
You're young. Right now, you see settling as some sort of a failure.
It is, by definition.
Yeah, but by the time someone is right for you, it won't feel like settling. And the only person left to judge you will be the 23-year-old girl with the target on your back.
Wow, that was depressing.
But that's good, because I bet my 30s are gonna be even tougher than my 20s. My right knee's gonna get worse. Screen-printed tees are gonna become less and less age-appropriate. Not that I'll care, but they will. Financial and medical emergencies will pop up. Loved ones will die. But you know something? My problems may get bigger, but I've never been better equipped to handle them.
That's what Before Sunset articulated so well.
I don't know. When I was younger, I was healthier, but I was racked with insecurity, you know? Now I'm older and my problems are deeper, but I'm more equipped to handle them.
One of my favorite Joss Whedon quotes is this: when you lose your arm, you don't grow a new arm. You learn to tie your shoes with one hand.
All right. Say stop.
Wait, what? Stop.
Oh!
None of this is meant to scare the younglings, mind you. You young 20-somethings, or even younger, who subscribe to this channel. We're all bombarded with images of really young people doing really, really well at a very young age, even in some of the media that I've endorsed in this video. You think I wasn't doing the math all throughout Second Service to figure out how old Chris Nolan was when he made Following? Never forget, they are the outliers. Just run your race. Getting there first usually just means you didn't check your work properly. Look, I've only been 30 for a couple of months, so maybe this is all bullshit. But all throughout my 20s, my biggest fear was that I'd spend my entire life in pursuit of a dream I'd never achieve and alienate all my loved ones in the process. And now, my biggest fear is, I don't know, sharks? And I recognize that that's an irrational fear. So come and get me, 30s. Anything you throw at me is just going into screenplay. Wait for police siren,